Good evening. Tonight's story is a quiet walk through warm rooms on a rainy night, through wood and candlelight, through careful habits, and through a door that most people pass without ever seeing. It is a story about a small coastal town that sleeps early, a library that keeps more than books, and a forgotten astronomer who once watched the silent sky with patient attention. Nothing will hurry me here. Nothing will demand anything from me, only soft light, steady breath, and a gentle unfolding, like a page turning slowly, one line at a time. I am not in a rush as I begin. Outside, rain moves across the evening in patient lines, and I imagine myself standing at the edge of that quiet town, looking inward. The streets shine faintly, as if they have been polished by weather and time. Windows glow from within, not brightly, but kindly. The kind of glow that forgives the long day. This is Harbor Glen. I have walked its streets many nights before, though I rarely speak of it. It is the sort of place that seems ordinary at first glance. Brick storefronts, narrow sidewalks, fishing boats resting in the harbor, but it holds its stillness carefully, like something wrapped in linen and stored for safekeeping. Tonight, I will walk through its warm rooms. I will open a door hidden behind shelves. I will remember a man who studied the sky without needing it to answer him. If you find yourself enjoying this quiet beginning, you might consider staying with me for the rest of the walk. And if you wish, you can tell me where you are listening from, and what the night feels like around you. For now, though, there is nothing to do but step forward. The rain continues, and I begin. In this world, the night arrives in layers. I notice the first layer in the shop windows, when their light begins to dim as though each bulb is remembering it doesn't have to work so hard anymore. A display of postcards fades into reflection. A row of glass jars becomes a row of small moons. The second layer comes in the sidewalks. Footsteps thin out, and the empty spaces between them widen, until the street sounds less like a place where errands happen and more like a place where sleep is slowly being prepared. Then the rain makes itself known again, not loudly, not insistently, but with the steady confidence of something that doesn't need permission. It taps at gutters with a soft, repetitive patience. It slides down window glass in thin threads. It darkens the stone and makes the town's edges look smoother, as if Harbor Glen is being gently sanded by time. I let myself stand still for a moment, not because I'm lost, but because stillness is part of the entrance. I can feel the day loosening the way a coat loosens when the door finally closes behind you. My shoulders drop by a small degree. My hands, which have been doing their work all day, begin to remember warmth. Even my jaw unclenches. Just slightly, as if it had been holding a thought in place. There is a particular comfort in arriving somewhere that does not rush me. I don't have to perform anything here. I don't have to speak quickly or decide quickly. I can take the long way across the street if I want to, waiting for the rain to pause, or stepping into it anyway and letting it bead on my sleeves. I can watch a porch light glow through the mist and feel the simple truth that light, at night, is always a little more tender. As I walk, I allow my breath to slow in the same quiet way the town slows. Inhale, steady. Exhale, easy. I don't force it. I simply notice it, the way I might notice a tide changing without needing to name the exact moment it turns. The air is cool, damp but gentle, and it carries that faint blend of salt and wetwood that belongs to coastal places in autumn. I pass the bakery that is already closed, its windows dark except for a single safety light in the back. I can almost smell what was there earlier, cinnamon and warm sugar, like a memory that lingers politely. I pass the little hardware store with its sign turned to closed, and the movie theater with a poster that looks slightly blurred behind the rain-slick glass. Everything feels softened. Even the outlines of buildings seem less sharp, as though the town is giving itself permission to rest. I think, briefly, about how nights can be different from each other. Some nights hurry, full of noise and bright distractions. But this one is a night that arrives with care, as if it is laying down blankets in a room. This is a night that does not ask for more effort from me. It asks for less. It asks for surrender, but not the dramatic kind, only the gentle kind, the kind that feels like a hand releasing a tight grip. When I reach the corner, I slow without meaning to. The street lamp above me makes a pale circle on the wet pavement. Raindrops fall through it and become visible for an instant, like tiny, brief comets. I watch them, and I feel my thoughts begin to thin out. Not vanish, just widen. Like clouds spreading until the sky has room again. In my pocket, I can feel something folded. A small pressure. A private reminder. I don't take it out yet. I don't need to. The point is not to hurry toward whatever it means. The point is to let the evening hold me first, the way warm air holds a person when they step inside after being outside too long. I imagine the sensation of warmth returning fully to my fingers. I imagine my coat loosening at the shoulders. I imagine entering a place where the lights are low and steady, where sound is respectful, where pages turn like quiet wings. I let my chest soften around my breath. I let my brow smooth. I let the muscles around my eyes relax, as if they no longer have to search for anything at all. And then, as gently as a lantern being lit, I let the story continue forward. It is late autumn in Harbor Glen, and I always know it without checking a calendar. The season announces itself in subtler ways here. The air carries a deeper coolness, not sharp enough to sting, but steady enough to settle into sleeves and collars. The light fades earlier each evening, as though the sun has decided to leave the town to its lamps and windows. Even the gulls along the harbor seem quieter, their calls stretched thin against the damp sky. Harbor Glen rests along the northeastern coast of the United States, where the sea is not dramatic but constant. The shoreline curves inward like a careful hand, forming a bay that holds fishing boats and small docks in patient rows. During the day, the water reflects a pale silver. At night, especially on evenings like this, it becomes an unbroken field of dark velvet, touched only by the faint shimmer of distant lights. The weather tonight is cool and damp, but gentle. Rain falls in narrow threads rather than heavy sheets. It gathers on rooftops and slides along gutters with a soft, continuous murmur. The kind of rain that does not demand attention, but earns it slowly. I breathe it in and notice how clearly scents rise in this weather: salt from the bay drifting inland, wet cedar from porch railings, a faint sweetness lingering from a bakery that closed its doors hours ago after baking cinnamon rolls in the morning. On Wren Street, the stone sidewalks shine like polished obsidian. Rainwater collects in the seams between the slabs and moves carefully toward the curb, as if it understands the town's preference for order. Street lamps cast small halos that tremble faintly with each falling drop. I watch the reflection stretch and soften, turning brick walls and shop windows into wavering paintings of light. Most storefronts are already dark. The hardware store closed at 5. The bakery locked its door before sunset. A small sign hangs crookedly in the window of the movie theater, announcing the week's single late showing. Harbor Glen does not cling to the evening. It allows it to arrive fully. Without resistance, at the end of Wren Street stands the Harbor Glen Public Library. The building is older than many of the homes surrounding it. Stone and brick rise in steady lines, wide steps leading to heavy oak doors framed by tall windows. The structure feels grounded, as though it has grown from the earth rather than been placed upon it. I have often thought that if the wind were to grow stronger, or the rain to fall harder, the library would remain unmoved, not defiant, but certain of its place. Tonight, behind the tall glass panes, candlelight glows, not bright, not theatrical. Just steady flames resting in simple glass cups. They line the front desk and sit upon wall brackets, their reflections doubling softly in the windows. The light is warm-toned, almost honey-colored, and it makes the stone facade appear less severe. The building seems to exhale. I pause at the base of the steps, letting the sight settle into me. My coat is damp at the shoulders. My hands are cool. Yet the warmth inside the library feels close enough to touch, as though it extends beyond the door in invisible waves. For a moment, I see my reflection in the rain-darkened glass, a figure slightly blurred, carrying the quiet weight of a day. Time here feels slower than it does elsewhere. Late autumn. A rainy evening. A town that closes its doors early and dims its lights without regret. The bay breathing in the dark. The stone steps slick beneath my shoes. The steady glow waiting behind glass. I climb the steps without hurry. Each one feels deliberate, like moving deeper into a thought rather than simply toward a building. When I reach the door, I rest my palm against the brass handle. It is cool and solid, worn smooth by years of hands. In this small, quiet moment, I understand my place clearly. I am in Harbor Glen. It is late autumn, night has settled fully, and the library is waiting. Life in Harbor Glen follows patterns so gentle that I sometimes forget they are patterns at all. They feel less like rules and more like shared habits, formed quietly over years of living beside the same water and beneath the same turning sky. I move within those habits without resistance. In many ways, they move within me. In the mornings, fishermen return early, their boats easing into the harbor before the sun has climbed high. By noon, crates are stacked, ropes are coiled, and the docks grow still again. The scent of salt and engine oil lingers faintly in the air, but even that feels orderly, contained within its proper hours. Work begins early here and often ends early too, as though the town prefers to complete its tasks before darkness has fully arrived. The hardware store closes at 5. I know this not because I need nails or hinges, but because I pass it often enough to see the owner flip the sign with the same unhurried motion each evening. The small grocery dims half its lights before locking the door. The movie theater shows a single late film on Fridays, and even then the lobby bulbs are softened, casting a glow that feels like a promise of sleep rather than spectacle. People wave without stopping. They nod instead of lingering. Conversations on sidewalks taper naturally into quiet, without awkwardness. Doors close softly. Footsteps lighten after dusk. It is not enforced. It is simply understood. Harbor Glen rests early, and most of us rest with it. The library belongs especially to these slower hours. During the day, it is practical. Children arrive on Saturdays with sticky fingers and determined expressions, choosing books with decisive care. Retirees unfold newspapers at long oak tables. Someone always asks for a cookbook recommendation. Pages turn. Chairs shift. The front desk bell rings softly now and then. It is a place of ordinary purpose, but in the evening, the purpose changes. I feel it each time I step inside after work. The building seems to inhale differently once the daylight fades. The shelves stand more quietly. The aisles feel deeper. Candlelight rests in glass cups, not for necessity, but for intention. The electric lights remain dimmed, as though brightness would be impolite. In this hour, the library asks nothing of me. It does not measure productivity. It does not urge efficiency. It offers something rarer: permission. Permission to sit without explanation. Permission to think slowly. Permission to let the day loosen its grip. I often come here after leaving the print shop near the bay. My work there is precise, trimming edges, aligning stacks, pressing covers into place. I like the satisfaction of straight lines and clean margins, but the repetition settles into my shoulders. By the time evening arrives, my hands sometimes carry the faint scent of ink no matter how carefully I wash them. When I walk from the shop to the library, I feel the shift between those two worlds. One is measured by output. The other is measured by stillness. Inside the reading room, I choose a table near the window. Rain trails down the glass in narrow paths, blurring the street beyond. A single candle creates a circle of warm light on the oak surface. I open a book without urgency. Sometimes I read only a few pages.
Careful now.
Sometimes I read none at
there you
all,
are.
letting the presence of the pages be enough. Around me, others do the same. A man in a wool coat studies a map. An older woman turns pages slowly, as if each one deserves consideration. No one speaks loudly. No one needs to. This is what ordinary life means here. Work completed before dark, windows glowing against rain, shelves that do not demand attention but offer it freely. In Harbor Glen, comfort is not dramatic. It is assembled from small consistencies, a sign turned at closing time, a candle trimmed carefully, a book returned to its proper place. I find comfort where I can, I keep small routines, and when the night chooses to be gentle, I allow myself to be gentle too. If this town moves in a steady rhythm, then the people within it move like quiet notes carried inside that rhythm, each of us small, deliberate, and rarely out of place. I am one of those notes. My name is Nora Bennett, and most days I work at a print shop near the bay, a narrow storefront pressed gently between a marine supply store and a cafe that smells faintly of roasted beans long after the last cup has been poured. The print shop is a place devoted to alignment. Paper stacked square. Corners trimmed clean. Ink rolled evenly across metal plates with patient pressure. I spend hours leaning over cutting boards, guiding thick sheets beneath the blade, feeling the subtle resistance before the clean, satisfying slide downward. There is comfort in that precision. When margins line up exactly as they should and covers press smoothly into place, something inside me settles into order as well. Straight lines on a page seem to encourage straight lines in thought. The machines hum at a low, consistent pitch throughout the day. Not loud enough to overwhelm, but constant enough to become part of the air itself. By late afternoon, that hum lingers in my ears even after the presses are cleaned and covered. My shoulders carry a familiar ache from bending forward. My fingertips sometimes hold the faint scent of ink no matter how carefully I scrub them. It is not unpleasant. It is simply evidence of time spent working with care. When I lock the shop door in the evening, I often pause for a moment on the sidewalk. The bay lies only a short distance away, and I can hear the soft knock of ropes against masts, the low shifting of water against wood. The sky above Harbor Glen at that hour is usually dimming into slate, clouds layered thickly in late autumn. I draw my coat closer, not out of urgency, but habit, and begin the familiar walk toward the library. I do not always admit, even to myself, how much I rely on that building, not because I am lonely in any dramatic way. My life is steady. My routines are solid. Yet there is a particular kind of tiredness that settles behind the eyes after a day of careful concentration. The library eases that tiredness without requiring explanation. It does not ask me to improve myself. It does not ask me to perform. It simply allows me to sit beneath its high ceilings and breathe at a slower pace. At the front desk sits Mr. Calvin Hale, the evening librarian, who seems as permanent as the oak shelves behind him. His hair has thinned and turned gray at the temples, and his glasses rest low on his nose, catching candlelight in small amber glints. Even when the room is nearly empty, he speaks in a tone that suggests the presence of many listeners. Perhaps he believes the books themselves deserve courtesy. When he stamps a return slip, He does so with measured care, pressing the date firmly and lifting the stamp straight upward to avoid any blur of ink. When he slides a card back into its pocket, he aligns the edges precisely. I have watched these motions more than once, drawn to the steadiness of them. In a world that often feels hurried elsewhere, his movements remain untroubled by speed. We know each other in the quiet way that repetition allows. He nods when I enter, not broadly, but enough to acknowledge recognition, nod in return, setting my books gently on the counter. He does not ask unnecessary questions about my day. I do not offer unnecessary explanations about my mood. There is something respectful in that restraint. We share space without intrusion, conversation without demand. Occasionally he will recommend a title by sliding it a few inches toward me and saying, "You might find this interesting." He never insists. Beyond Mr. Hale, there are others who inhabit these evening hours. A retired schoolteacher who reads travel memoirs near the fireplace. A young man who studies nautical charts with quiet intensity. An elderly couple who sit side by side, turning pages in companionable silence. We rarely speak, yet I feel we recognize one another as participants in the same gentle ritual, and somewhere woven into the deeper grain of this building, behind stone walls and beneath polished floors, there lingers another presence, quieter still, a name not often spoken aloud, Dr. Arthur Quill. I first noticed his name etched faintly into a small brass plaque near the stairwell leading to the upper stacks. The letters were modest, almost reluctant to draw attention. Most visitors likely pass without seeing them. But once I had read the name, I found myself pausing there each evening, tracing the engraved lines lightly with my eyes. Dr. Arthur Quill, the astronomer who once watched the silent sky above Harbor Glen before electric street lamps softened the stars. There are no large portraits of him in the main reading room. No dramatic displays recounting his work. If he is remembered, it is quietly, embedded into the structure itself rather than announced upon its walls. Sometimes I imagine him climbing to the roof long ago, carrying notebooks and instruments, patient beneath a sky unbroken by modern light. I do not yet understand why his name draws me as it does. But on certain evenings, especially those touched by rain and candlelight, I sense that the library holds more than shelves and records. It holds continuities. It holds careful intentions passed from one steady pair of hands to another, and without fully realizing it, I feel that my own hands may one day be asked to take part in that quiet inheritance. Life in Harbor Glen is not difficult in a dramatic way. It does not demand heroic endurance, nor does it test anyone with spectacle. Instead, it carries a quieter weight, the kind that settles gradually across the shoulders and remains there without announcement. I feel it most clearly in the small hours between leaving work and reaching the library. When the day's effort lingers in my muscles and behind my eyes, the wind off the bay can slip through gloves in winter, finding the thin spaces between wool and skin. Sea air works patiently at metal hinges and painted trim, rusting and fading what is left unattended. Roof shingles loosen over years. Wooden steps soften at the edges. Nothing collapses suddenly. Things simply weather, as all things do. People weather, too. I see it in the faces of fishermen who wake before dawn, in shopkeepers who stand all day beneath fluorescent lights, in parents guiding children home through drizzle with one steady hand at a small back. No one complains loudly. Fatigue is folded neatly into routine. Carried like folded paper in a coat pocket, I carry it as well. My shoulders often ache from leaning over cutting boards at the print shop. The repetitive precision that brings me comfort also brings a dull stiffness that settles between my shoulder blades. Sometimes, when I catch my reflection in a dark shop window after closing, I look like someone holding more than a simple day. There is a faint heaviness around my eyes, a pause in my posture before I begin walking again. Rent must be paid. Groceries must be bought. The boiler in my small apartment makes a knocking sound that I have learned to ignore for now. These are not overwhelming burdens. They are ordinary ones. But ordinary weight, carried daily, still presses downward. That is why the library matters more than I often admit. Inside its stone walls, tiredness becomes something softer. Not erased, not denied, but gentled. The air is warmer. The light is kinder. The hours seem less insistent. I can sit at a table beneath a steady flame and feel, without anyone saying it aloud, that rest is permitted. Rest is not indulgence here. It is maintenance. On this particular evening, as rain threads down the windows, I feel an additional pressure resting in my coat pocket. It is different from the usual weight of keys and coins. Smaller. Thinner. Yet somehow more present. A folded note. I found it the day before. Tucked inside an old atlas that had been sent to the print shop for rebinding. The book was thick, its pages heavy with age and careful use. When I opened it across the work table, the slip of paper slid free and landed near my hand as lightly as dust. The handwriting was neat and deliberate. Not ornate, not hurried. The kind of writing shaped by lamplight and patience. It read, "Come to the library after nightfall. Ask for the box with the star mark. The key belongs to the building, not to any pocket." And at the bottom, in slightly smaller script, "For the memory of Dr. Arthur Quill, who watched the silent sky." I read the note twice before folding it again. I did not feel fear. There was no sharpness to the words. Only an invitation, written in a tone that suggested calm expectation rather than urgency. Still, it lingered with me through the rest of the day. Each time I aligned a stack of paper or trimmed a page edge, I felt the quiet presence of that folded slip waiting in my pocket. Now, seated at my usual table near the library window, I rest my palm lightly against the fabric of my coat. The paper beneath it feels firm at the crease, like a small anchor holding me in this moment. The rain continues its patient rhythm against the glass. A candle flame wavers once, then steadies. Somewhere across the room, a page turns. The weight in my pocket does not feel heavy. It feels deliberate, and as I sit there, breathing slowly in the warm, wax-scented air, I understand that some evenings arrive carrying more than routine. Some evenings carry a quiet turning point, folded small enough to fit inside a pocket, waiting for the right hour to be opened. The day I found the note began like any other, with the steady hum of the presses and the soft alignment of paper beneath my hands. The atlas had arrived in a worn cardboard sleeve, its corners blunted from years of being lifted and set down. A small tag from the library was looped through its spine, requesting a new cover and reinforcement along the binding. I remember brushing a faint layer of dust from its surface before opening it across the wide wooden table in the back room of the shop. The pages were thick and slightly yellowed, textured like something made to endure handling. Coastal lines curved across them in careful ink. Depth markings dotted the bays. There were notes in the margins from decades past, measurements, corrections, initials written in disciplined script. I ran my fingers along the inner hinge to test its flexibility, planning how best to preserve it without altering its character. That was when the slip of paper loosened itself from between two pages and drifted downward. It did not fall dramatically. It simply slid free and landed near my wrist, light as a feather. For a moment, I assumed it was a receipt or an old checkout record. The library often tucked small administrative notes inside volumes before sending them out for repair. I nearly set it aside without reading it, but something about the weight of it, slightly thicker than ordinary paper, made me pause. I unfolded it carefully, mindful not to tear the crease. The handwriting was steady and deliberate. Not decorative, not hurried. Each letter stood clearly, evenly spaced, as though the writer had allowed time for each stroke. Come to the library after nightfall, ask for the box with the star mark. The key belongs to the building, not to any pocket. And beneath those lines, in smaller script, for the memory of Dr. Arthur Quill, who watched the silent sky. I remember standing very still after reading it the first time. The presses continued humming behind me. Outside the shop window, a delivery truck passed slowly through mist. Nothing in the room acknowledged that anything unusual had occurred. Yet the words on that slip of paper seemed to alter the air around me. I read it again, more slowly. There was no threat in the message. No urgency. It did not command, it invited. The phrasing felt measured, almost gentle. The key belongs to the building, not to any pocket. I turned that line over in my mind as I folded the paper along its original crease. For a moment, I considered bringing the note directly back to the library that afternoon, asking Mr. Hale whether he knew anything about it. But the first instruction was clear: after nightfall. And something in me respected that boundary. The evening had been chosen for a reason, so I placed the note into the inner pocket of my coat and returned to my work. All through the rest of the day, I felt its presence. When I trimmed the atlas's edges and pressed the new cover into place, the folded paper rested against my side like a quiet reminder. When I wiped the ink rollers clean and stacked finished orders by the door, it remained there, patient. It did not burn with urgency. It did not demand immediate action. It simply waited. Time moved as it always did in the shop, measured in tasks completed, in paper cut cleanly, in machines powered down. Yet beneath that familiar flow, another current seemed to run, subtle but undeniable. By the time I locked the door and stepped into the damp evening air, I knew I would follow the instructions. Night arrived in its usual layers. Shop windows dimmed. Footsteps thinned. Rain began again, tapping softly at gutters and sliding down glass. Harbor Glen repeated its rituals without deviation. And I walked toward the library with the folded note secure in my pocket, feeling neither anxious nor hurried, only aware that something quiet had begun, aware that time, which so often moves in straight lines from one task to the next, had gently shifted direction. As I climbed the library steps that night, I felt the paper beneath my fingers once more. It seemed less like an object and more like a thread, thin, deliberate, leading inward. I opened the door and stepped into the warm light, ready to ask for the box marked with a star. When I step inside the library that evening, the warmth greets me first, rising gently against the dampness still clinging to my coat. The entry hall is lit by rows of candle cups set carefully along the desk and in small brackets on the walls. Their flames are steady, protected by glass, casting a honey-colored glow across the oak floors. The scent of wax blends with old paper and something faintly herbal, perhaps tea steeped somewhere deeper within the building. I pause just beyond the door, allowing the quiet to settle around me fully. The rain continues outside, but here it is softened into distance, like a memory rather than a presence. My shoulders loosen by a small degree. My breathing evens out. I remove my coat and drape it over my arm before walking toward my usual table by the window. The glass is cool when I brush it lightly with my fingertips. Thin lines of rain travel downward in patient paths, bending the reflections of street lamps into wavering gold threads. I sit, open a book at random, and let my eyes move across a few lines without forcing meaning. The act of reading, even lightly, feels like placing stones into a stream, something steady against the current of thought. Across the room, a chair shifts softly. A page turns. The fire in the hearth near the far wall holds only a bed of low coals tonight, breathing out warmth without crackling. Everything seems measured, deliberate, untroubled. After a few minutes, I close the book. The folded note in my pocket has become impossible to ignore, not heavy, not insistent, but present in the way a quiet question can be present. I slide my hand into my coat and touch the crease once, feeling the firm line where the paper bends. I stand. My steps toward the front desk are unhurried. The thick rug beneath my shoes absorbs the sound of movement. Mr. Hale looks up as I approach, and something subtle shifts in his expression. Not surprise. Not confusion. Recognition. I do not speak immediately. Instead, I reach into my pocket and unfold the note carefully on the desk between us. The candlelight catches the ink, illuminating the steady script. He reads it once, then he nods, as though confirming a detail long anticipated. Without asking a question, without explaining anything aloud, he bends slightly and reaches beneath the counter. When he rises again, he carries a small metal box. It is dark and smooth, lined with cloth at the edges. On its lid, pressed cleanly into the surface, is a simple star. He places it between us. For a moment, neither of us moves. The candle flames reflect softly along the curve of the metal. I notice that his hands rest lightly at his sides now. As if the decision no longer belongs to him, I lift the lid. Inside lies a brass key, warm toned in the candlelight, its bow shaped in a simple oval. Beside it rests a narrow slip of paper with a single line written in the same steady hand as the note, West Stacks. Third aisle. Shelf marked maps tides. I inhale slowly, letting the air settle in my chest before lifting the key. It carries a gentle weight, solid and real against my palm. Mr. Hale steps back, not dramatically, not ceremonially, just enough to give space. His nod this time is smaller, almost private. I close the lid of the box and return it to him. He slides it quietly beneath the counter once more, then I turn toward the aisles. The west side of the library is darker, the candles spaced farther apart. The shelves stand taller here, casting longer shadows that feel protective rather than ominous. My steps are measured. The key rests in my hand, cool at first, then warming with contact. At the third aisle, I find the section labeled Maps Tides. Old atlases line the shelves. Coastal charts. Weather logs. Their spines are worn at the edges, titles faded but dignified. The faint scent of salt seems stronger here, as if the paper has absorbed decades of proximity to the sea. I run my fingertips lightly along the edge of the shelf and notice something I have never noticed before, near the baseboard, almost hidden in shadow. A small brass plate catches the light, no words. Only a star, the same star. I kneel slowly, bringing the candle's glow closer. The oak paneling along the wall shows a seam so fine it could easily be mistaken for natural grain. At its center, a small knot in the wood disguises a keyhole. My hand remains steady as I fit the brass key into place. It slides in without resistance. For a brief moment, I simply hold it there, feeling the quiet weight of the mechanism waiting. Then I turn it. Inside the wall, something shifts, not loudly, not abruptly, but with a soft internal release, as though a long-held breath has finally been exhaled. And the panel begins to open. The panel opens without drama, swinging inward on hinges so well kept that they make no protest. A narrow passage reveals itself beyond the oak, illuminated by a single candle set within a glass cup on a small bracket. The flame does not flicker wildly. It stands upright and calm, as though it has been waiting for someone to arrive and notice it. Warm air brushes lightly against my face, carrying the familiar scent of wax and polished wood, yet deeper somehow, less traveled. I remain kneeling for a moment longer, listening. The sounds of the main reading room, pages turning, distant shifting chairs, are softened here, filtered through stone and shelving. The rain outside has become a faint, steady hush. I rise slowly and step across the threshold. The passage is narrow but not confining. The walls are paneled in oak, darker than the wood in the public rooms, their surfaces worn smooth by time rather than touch. My footsteps fall quietly against a runner laid down the center of the floor. The candlelight casts a soft oval around me, enough to see by without revealing too much at once. There is no sense of secrecy meant to unsettle. Instead, there is the feeling of entering a place that has been preserved carefully, not hidden out of fear but protected out of intention. I find that my breathing has slowed again, each inhale measured, each exhale unhurried. At the end of the passage stands a second door. It is taller than the first panel, framed by carved wood that curves in simple, elegant lines. At its center is the same star symbol, pressed into the grain with quiet precision. The brass key rests warm in my hand. I step closer and fit it once more into a waiting lock. Again, it slides in easily. Again, I pause, not from hesitation, but from respect. There is something about this measured progression, note, box, key, panel, door, that feels deliberate. Nothing here rushes. Nothing demands immediate understanding. Each action unfolds only when the previous one has settled. I turn the key, the mechanism responds with a soft internal shift, like pages aligning inside a closed book. The door opens inward. Beyond it lies a room that feels less like an extension of the library and more like its hidden heart. The space rises upward in a gentle curve, walls lined floor to ceiling with shelves. Oak balconies trace the perimeter at 2 levels, connected by a narrow staircase whose railing glows faintly in the candlelight. The metal is not polished to brightness, it holds instead a warm, muted sheen, as though it has absorbed decades of reflected flame. Candles stand in careful rows along the lower shelves and upon small ledges built into the walls. Their light travels upward, softening corners and dissolving sharp edges. Shadows gather high above but never deepen into darkness. The entire room seems balanced between illumination and rest. At the center stands a large wooden table. Upon it rests a single book. Heavy and plain, its cover dark and unadorned. It waits without ornament, without announcement. I step inside fully, allowing the door behind me to close with a gentle hush. The air here is warmer than in the main reading room, but not stifling. It carries a stillness that feels curated, as though each breath has been filtered through years of quiet study. My footsteps echo faintly as I approach the table. The sound is not hollow. It is rounded, softened by wood and height. I rest my hand on the book's cover. The surface is cool beneath my palm. The leather yields slightly under pressure, worn smooth by careful handling. I do not open it immediately. Instead, I allow myself to stand there, absorbing the room's presence. Above me, the balconies curve like the inside of a shell. The shelves hold volumes whose spines reflect small glints of candlelight. No dust gathers visibly here. No disorder interrupts the lines. It does not feel abandoned, it feels maintained, and as that realization settles into me, I understand that this room has not been waiting in silence alone, it has been waiting in readiness. Slowly, with steady hands, I open the book. The book opens without resistance, its spine bending smoothly as though it has been exercised often, though not recently. The first page is thick, cream-colored, edged faintly in gold that has dulled with time. The handwriting across it is the same steady script I saw on the note and the slip inside the box, deliberate. Balanced, unhurried. At the top of the page is written simply, "For those who tend the quiet." I trace the line with my eyes before turning the page. The entries are dated, stretching back decades. Each one records small, careful observations. Not grand declarations. Not dramatic discoveries. Instead, they describe nights spent on the library roof, telescopes adjusted by patient hands, constellations mapped as they drifted across dark autumn skies before electric street lamps softened their clarity. Dr. Arthur Quill writes of Orion rising above the harbor, of the Pleiades shimmering like frost against black velvet, of the moon reflected in the bay, fractured gently by ripples. His words are precise but calm, never urgent. He notes cloud cover, wind direction, the faint salt scent carried upward even to the roof. Between astronomical entries, he writes of maintenance. Replaced 3 candle cups in west stacks, dust gathered along upper balcony, swept carefully, checked hinges behind maps tides. Functioning smoothly. I pause at that line. The hidden room was never separate from the rest of the building. It was integrated, tended, folded into daily care. The mechanism behind the oak panel is described in measured detail, oiled in winter, checked each spring. The key, he notes, belongs to the building, not to any pocket. The phrase settles into me again, no longer mysterious. I continue reading. Years pass across the pages. Eventually, Dr. Quill's entries grow shorter. The handwriting remains steady but leaves more space between lines. In one later passage, he writes not of stars but of succession. Quiet rooms endure only if someone keeps them so. The sky is silent not because it is empty, but because it listens. A building may listen too, if it is kept warm and orderly. There is no farewell written. No dramatic ending. The final entry is practical, candles trimmed. West mechanism sound. Book left in readiness. I close the volume gently. The room feels even stiller now, not heavy with revelation, but full with understanding. This space was never intended as a secret for secrecy's sake. It was a reserve of calm, maintained deliberately so that when ordinary tiredness pressed too heavily on ordinary lives, someone might find this interior steadiness waiting. A soft footstep sounds behind me. I turn to see Mr. Hale standing just inside the doorway, holding a lantern low at his side. The flame within it glows softly through its glass casing. His presence does not startle me. It feels like the continuation of a pattern already begun. He does not speak at first. Instead, he steps forward and places the lantern on the table beside the open book. The additional light deepens the gold tones of the railing and warms the oak around us. "You found it," he says quietly. I nod. He gestures toward a side corridor I had not noticed before, partially hidden by the curve of the wall. We walk together without hurry. The corridor opens into a smaller hearth room tucked within the structure of the hidden hall. A modest fireplace holds low coals. 2 chairs face one another with folded blankets resting across their backs. A kettle sits on a small iron stand, steam rising in faint curls. Mr. Hale pours tea into 2 simple cups. The scent is mild, chamomile with a trace of honey. He sets 1 cup before me and takes the other himself. This room, he says softly, is not a reward. It is maintenance. I understand. He reaches into his coat pocket and places a small brass token on the table between us. It is shaped like the star pressed into the doors. Reminder, he continues, that calm requires tending. We sit in silence for a while, sipping tea. The warmth settles into my hands. Then my shoulders. The hidden hall beyond the corridor holds its steady glow. Eventually, we return to the larger room. Mr. Hale takes a candle snuffer from a nearby shelf and gently lowers it over 1 flame. The light disappears without smoke. After a brief pause, he lights a fresh candle beside it. The new flame steadies, indistinguishable from the old. I take a small brush from the table and sweep a thin line of dust from the edge of a shelf. 1 slow pass. The wood gleams softly again. In that simple motion, something inside me aligns. Not a grand calling. Not a dramatic shift, just a quiet belonging. The room does not demand more than that, when the evening finally begins to fold itself closed. Nothing dramatic signals the ending. There is no announcement, no sudden dimming of light. The shift happens gradually, the way rain sometimes lessens without anyone noticing the exact moment it softens. Mr. Hale walks with me back through the narrow passage, the lantern held low, its glow steady against the paneled walls. The hidden door closes behind us with a quiet alignment of wood, the seams settling so naturally into the grain that it seems less like a concealed entrance and more like a memory gently put away. The brass key returns to its small metal box beneath the front desk. Mr. Hale lowers the lid carefully, as though completing a sentence. He does not lock it with ceremony. He simply places it back where it belongs. I understand now what the note meant. The key belongs to the building, not to any pocket. It is part of the library's rhythm, not a possession to be carried away. A few readers remain in the main room. A man turns a page beneath a candle cup. An elderly woman closes her book and smooths its cover with her palm before standing. Chairs shift softly. The coals in the hearth breathe out their final warmth. The space feels neither empty nor full, but balanced. When I step outside, the rain continues in a fine, even thread. The stone steps glisten. The harbor air meets my face with cool gentleness. I pause at the bottom of the stairs and look back once at the tall windows. Where candlelight still glows behind glass, in my pocket rests the small brass star. At home, I place it in a shallow wooden dish near my window. I light a single candle beside it and sit for a while without reading, without planning, without needing to solve anything at all. The quiet from the hidden room lingers, not as secrecy, but as steadiness. The town settles deeper into night, the sky remains wide and listening, and I let my breathing follow the same calm rhythm, unhurried, at rest. Thank you for staying with me as we wandered through the quiet streets of Harbor Glen, beneath its dim shop windows and rain-softened rooftops, and into the still observatory where one patient astronomer once watched the silent sky. If this gentle journey through memory, starlight, and forgotten rooms brought you a sense of calm, you're warmly invited to like and subscribe for more peaceful stories to accompany your evenings. May you sleep deeply tonight, holding a quiet sense of wonder. And as you close your eyes, may the steady rhythm of distant waves and the soft glow of unseen stars remind you that even the smallest light, patiently kept, can outlast the years. Rest well. And let the silent sky keep watch until morning.